won't repeat what you just heard about Hurricane Matthew on NBC Nightly News, but if you're just flipping on the TV and catching up for the day, here's a brief update on the path of the storm from meteorologist Danielle Grant.
Hey Kyle, I'm here in the Weather Center actually just keeping a close eye on the National Hurricane Center as they are coming out with a new update here within the next couple of minutes. But as you can see, the satellite loop showcasing this monstrous storm as it's beginning to bear in on the eastern Florida coastline. You can zoom in and can see that well-defined eye. Now here is a look at the radar loop, and it's pretty impressive. Now you take the eye, you can go either 60 miles in either direction, and you still will be encountering hurricane force winds. That's more than 100 miles per hour. And as the storm system grazes parts of the eastern coastline, we're going to be watching out for that really having impacts not only along the coast but also inland too. Not only will the rain be a problem, but storm surge as well. You can see parts of the Carolinas easily picking up 9 to 12 inches. The storm system now grazing northern Florida, potentially coming in toward Georgia, South Carolina by tomorrow as a Category 3 storm. It hooks around towards Charleston before taking a southerly track by Sunday and potentially going just right back to where it is right now. It'd be very interesting if that happens, Kyle. We'll keep a close eye on it.
All right, appreciate the update, Danielle. CU Boulder is going back through yesterday's incident on campus, acknowledging that it was not handled perfectly, but perfection is a difficult standard to meet. A man was seen threatening people with a sword-like knife outside the Champions Center near the football stadium. He was shot and killed by police after he went inside and refused to drop that weapon. Alerts went out across campus, and then came the idiot pranksters calling in 3 false threats. No one but the suspect was injured. University is reviewing its response and also the communication that went out to students. Sarah Thomas has stopped swimming. After 60 hours in the water, the marathon swimmer from Conifer was aiming to set a world record swimming 81.8 miles on Lake Powell near the Utah-Arizona border, and she made it. Got in the water around 8 a.m. Tuesday, finished her swim a bit after 4 p.m. today. Think about it. To get the record, she had to do this without help. No nap, no holding onto the boat. No one on the support team was even allowed to touch her. They tossed her protein shakes to drink. She wasn't even allowed to draft behind the boat. She had to face the water and the winds herself. She is now unofficially the record holder for the longest known unassisted solo swim, according to the Marathon Swimmers Federation. Congratulations to Conifer's Sarah Thomas. Opening night of the Great American Beer Fest is underway right now. I have missed 62 minutes of it so far, 90 minutes by the end of the show, not that I'm counting. The festival begins with a countdown behind the scenes in a security control room that's high above the Denver Convention Center floor. Denver police, event security, and GABF staff all have seats to watch the scene below. Their jobs are to make sure that the 15,000 or so people at a time who are down there can drink safely.
We generally don't have a whole lot of problems.
Space management. The space management is fascinating to me in terms of how much space do people like to have.
That was one of the things that we've learned along the years, is that when we have a more crowded hall, people bump each other a little bit and might get a little bit testy with one another. So a few years ago we said, hey, why don't we create 10 more feet in the aisles? Added more halls that we were able to get, spread things out a little bit more, and really took a look at the design and thought, hey, we think this works better. The first year we did that, people said, we don't know what was different, but it felt much better in there.
All right, this is total nerd stuff, but I'm fascinated by the hour-by-hour timeline for GABF. It's weeks long. Carol Hiller's the operations manager. She runs a tight ship. Shout out to Carol. She highlights each item as it gets done, pulling off that 3-day festival that welcomes 60,000 people. Now, the vast majority of GABF attendees are men. I will sit down with the woman who's been running the show for 15 years in just a bit.
Next question, how much room is left in our cemeteries? We got a news release that piqued our interest this week about an expansion at Fort Logan National Cemetery. It's a bit of a morbid question, but it made us wonder if our growing city will ever run out of property to bury those who came before us.
It's breaking ground just in time.
Staring out across Fort Logan National Cemetery, the vision of fallen heroes seems to go on for miles. About 110,000 people are buried here. With an estimated 4,000 interred here every year, you can understand why they're worried about space.
We're down to maybe 1,000 cremation sites right now. So this is going to be done just in time.
This is a huge expansion project that will add 9,000 cremation sites and 2,500 plots for casket burials. They figure it'll be done right as those additional plots are finally needed by the middle of next year, and it will give the cemetery enough capacity to last through the mid-2020s.
It's land that we already own. It's been kind of in the works for several years.
It made us wonder about all cemeteries. Our city is growing after all, and property is quickly getting gobbled up. But mortuary science professor Martha Thayer says there is no shortage of space in our cemetery.
A cemetery that's 140 years old in Denver still has space.
Thayer says more people are choosing to be cremated as well, which means less space is needed.
You can have a columbarium that will house several hundred to 1,000, depending. And because it goes up, you can build as many as you need to.
And if you think cemeteries take up a lot of space, consider this.
If you put every single cemetery together in the United States, you wouldn't even fill up the state of Rhode Island.
Heads up if you have a loved one buried in Fort Logan. Some of the roads in the cemetery will be closed during this expansion. Fort Logan is right now negotiating with the state over state-owned land near the cemetery. The hope is to expand there after they run out of space in 2020.
If people have never been, they should go. It's beautiful.
Absolutely.
All right, thank you, Steve. So Congressman Mike Kaufman is either Donald Trump's best friend or he totally can't stand the guy, depending on which attack ad you believe. Our politics guy, Brandon Rittiman, truth-tested one recent ad that was running against Kaufman's Democratic challenger, Morgan Carroll. And tonight, Brandon looks at an ad that's trying to tie Kaufman to Trump.
The overall accusation from these ads by Morgan Carroll and her Democratic allies is that Kaufman and Donald Trump are cut from the same cloth. Kaufman disputes that. Let's dig into the details.
Congressman Kaufman stands with Donald Trump and will support Trump for president.
Whether that's true is an unknown. And to be clear, that's on Mike Kaufman. He's been asked again and again, and as recently as today, just 11 days from ballots mailing out to Colorado voters, his campaign tells us he's still undecided. Early this year, Kaufman's campaign manager did indicate he would support the eventual nominee back when Trump lost in Iowa. Since then, Kaufman has given us a maybe on whether he'll support Trump for president. The ad pretends to know his ultimate answer. Kaufman himself hasn't given us one.
Donald Trump would defund Planned Parenthood, and Mike Kaufman voted to defund it 6 times.
That's true. The only context to add is that while Donald Trump has been all over the map on abortion issues in his lifetime, Kaufman has consistently voted pro-life in his several terms in Congress.
What does Trump say about immigrants?
They're bringing drugs, they're rapists.
And Kaufman says immigrants should, quote, pull out a dictionary.
Kaufman's quote is accurate, but it's also outdated. He was making a point against bilingual ballots back in 2011 when he said this. Since then, he's said that bilingual ballots should only go out to voters who need them. More broadly, Kaufman has moderated his stances on immigration since his district was redrawn to include more minorities. He's even learned Spanish. His opponents argue that's pandering. His supporters say he's putting in effort to represent his constituents. We'll leave it to you to decide how to think about that. But there's even more in the ad about Kaufman and Trump.
They've spread falsehoods about President Obama.
Oh no, he was born in Kenya.
I don't know whether Barack Obama was born in the United States or not.
This one needs context. We might have gone with outdated for this as well, except they used the past tense. That audio you heard from Kaufman was him. He said it. It's fair to play it. The difference is Kaufman said he misspoke, and he apologized for saying this years ago. Trump has not, though he has since acknowledged the fact that the president was born in the United States.
Trump mocks those with disabilities. Kaufman says nothing.
And this is a faulty argument. More specifically, it's a fallacy called argument from silence. Saying nothing does not mean that Kaufman agrees with Trump. Bottom line, Trump and Kaufman agree on some things, and they've said some similar things. Kaufman has also left room for some of these attacks by not talking about Trump. But their connection isn't as deep and far-reaching as Carroll and the DCCC would like you to believe. With your truth test, I'm Brandon Rittiman.
Like that faulty argument, fallacy called argument from silence. I'm going to drop that in a discussion with my wife sometime. Hey, if you don't believe us and Brandon, you know, liberal media or conservative corporate-controlled media, you can check our research and you can see our truth test on that anti-Morgan Carroll ad on 9news.com. Is the A-line working today? The train to the plane that we all love. Wait for it, wait for it. Yes. Great news. A-Line's working like a champ on a cold, rainy day. A-Line's a big winner today, and so is RTD's social media team, because this week we introduced you to the ridiculously photogenic RTD Stock Photo Guy. He's the dude that RTD uses almost daily to promote everything from maps to meetings. Well, today RTD gave him his own hashtag, and ridiculously photogenic RTD Stock Photo Guy gave me a personal invite to tonight's RTD meeting. No, bro, I won't be there. Gotta get over to the beer fest.
Since when are there goldfish in the mountains? A next viewer sends us in search of an explanation. The woman who runs the Great American Beer Festival answers a crucial question.
Is GABF going to stay in Denver?
No, that's why people hate local TV news teases. Just play the full answer right now. Don't make them wait.
Is GABF going to stay in Denver?
Yes.
Solid yes. It says a solid yes.
I think we have a great home in Denver.
In a bit, we'll discuss whether one of America's biggest beer fests is changing for the better. And we'll go back to a simpler time.
The most Colorado thing we saw today was a snow sculpture of a bike. Nope, that would be an actual bike, left out in the snow overnight in Aspen, where the Aspen gold is beginning to mix with winter white. Tammy Sulans took this photo this morning, and we just love it. If you see something that screams Colorado, snap a photo, send it our way. Email next@9news.com or get our attention with the hashtag HeyNext.
That makes me cold just looking at it. You know what, tonight once again is going to be a chilly one, potentially looking at our first freeze here in the Denver metro area. We have that freeze warning in place truly for all of eastern Colorado and a little sliver out there across the western slope too. Overnight temperatures in the upper 20s, low 30s. Here in town, I'm thinking about 31 degrees. As the storm system moved out, it gave us those clear skies, the quiet winds this evening, and that will allow our temperatures to drop like a rock. So crank on the heater tonight. You're probably going to need the AC by the weekend. Right now, we'd have just a couple of light little snow showers going up in the high country, a few rain showers out there near Fort Collins and south toward Greeley and Larimer, Weld County. Those move out within the next couple of hours. We're in for a cold night, but a pretty decent afternoon tomorrow. The sunshine returns, temperatures in the mid 60s, and then we're cranking up the dial. The 70s are back for the weekend, and a quick gander at that 9-day forecast, maybe a few rain showers next Tuesday, and then potentially we're back to the 80s by next Friday. Wild.
Yeah, thanks, Danielle. The Great American Beer Festival started 1 hour and 14 minutes ago, still not counting. Convention center's packed with a bunch of guys drinking beer. That's not a gender stereotype, that's a fact. The woman who runs GABF for 15 of its last 35 years estimates that the crowd is 4-to-1 male to female. Nancy Johnson and I talked as they set up the festival. So what do you miss about the good old days?
You know, I think probably everybody has the same thought that when something's a little bit smaller, it feels like you're part of something that others maybe can't do, and it feels more fun. It's a little bit more exclusive. There's some great beer festivals around the country that are small. This is a big one. I think that's a fair criticism. The flip side of that is, where else can you get 780 breweries pouring some of the best beers in the country and walk through your map and say, I want to try these, which I've never had.
What is the most unfair criticism of GABF that you hear?
In years past, I think Friday and Saturday night sessions at the GABF were a little bit more of a party atmosphere. We've heard it called different things.
Yeah, frat party.
Frat party atmosphere.
Yeah.
It's very ruckus. People aren't here to drink the beer. I think that at one point, maybe 8-10 years ago, I think that was a fair criticism. I don't think that's the case now. I think we have so many beer enthusiasts out there who really care about the beer, and they really want to talk to the brewers, and they really want to taste new beers, that overall the attendees are so much more into beer than they were, probably 8-10 years ago.
What is it like being a female leader in an industry dominated by men?
It's fantastic. All of the years that I've been in this industry, I have seen every year more and more women get involved in this industry, and that's something that we talk about at the Brewers Association. Is how can we encourage more women to get involved? There's so many more women brewers now than there were when I started. Back in the day, there's so many more women who are putting on festivals. Young women are getting into the industry, loving it, and seeing a real path for themselves.
GABF has now spawned off all of these other events around town now. Are those competitors, or are those a pressure release valve for you guys? How do you see it?
I think it's great. I love everything that comes into town and goes on while we're here. And I think it's great for the city. I think it's great for the state. And I think people love it. There's all sorts of options.
For sure. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you, Kyle.
Thanks for a great event that's fun every year and
Thank
safe.
you. Thank you very much.
May I make a recommendation while we're talking beer? Our recommendations are never to our own work, but to someone else's stuff that deserves your attention. The GABF Fantasy Brewery Draft is about as beer geeky as it gets. The website Porch Drinking, which writes about great food and drink around town, gathers beer writers from across America, and then we draft the breweries that we think are going to win medals at the Great American Beer Festival. Like fantasy football, we score when our team scores. There's mine. I loaded up my team with Colorado picks this year, took left hand in the first round, then stacked up some Colorado-based chain breweries that often will medal, Rock Bottom and CB and Potts. My team also includes 2 newer breweries in Denver that I would not count out for Small Brewery of the Year, Comrade and Spangalang.
Man, Denver used to really know how to class up an election. This is 1907, and man, it's not the men that make this worth noticing. And what appears to be some type of naturally occurring koi pond in the high country. Next.
Nerd alert, election edition. Denver Public Library is joining other libraries nationwide, digging out old political collections and sharing them online this year. Today, a reminder that Election Day in Denver used to be a reason to get dressed up. The library guesses these photos were taken around 1907, so that would be 14 years after women in Colorado won the right to vote, and another 13 years before women's suffrage nationwide. We love that you all are on the lookout for the unusual to share with us and everyone at home using the hashtag HeyNext. Phil Nash and his husband Bob were up in the Lake George area, leaf peeping, when they peeped a pond that appeared to be full of goldfish. Mountain goldfish. Yes, the problem happens when people decide that they don't want little Bubbles and Nemo anymore and don't want to be responsible enough to find them a proper home. People dump goldfish in Colorado's natural waters. So then Bubbles and Nemo get their fishy groove thing on, and next thing you know, the pond is just chock full of goldfish, taking all the food and the space needed by the native species, and they spread their nasty goldfish diseases.
Maybe they don't necessarily want to flush them down the toilet, so they think they're doing the right thing by taking them up into these waterways and streams and just dumping them into the water to let them be free. But the unfortunate part about this is that it really does cause a significant problem for many of our native fish that we actually take great pains to grow those populations and to stock these waterways with.
Colorado Parks and Wildlife is dealing with some goldfish dumpings down southeast Colorado. They're going to leave the goldfish near Lake George. Figure winter will deal with them. You should know, dumping pet fish in Colorado's waters, actually a misdemeanor. We're back with a throwback 9 News promo that I almost didn't believe was real. Those were the days, huh? Posted that on Facebook today. SD Atlas wrote to us, I was one of the producers. The wedding scene includes a lot of members of my family. Great to see my mom dancing. She passed 6 years ago. Those were the days of producing fun image campaigns. And Ryan Erickson tweets to us, I can't believe I'm recording a local news program next. What have you done to me? Oh, Ryan, we'll see you next time. Actually, Steve Steger will see you next time. I'm off for Beer Fest weekend. Have a good one.